The following program contains graphic images and sexual content. Viewer discretion is advised. Today on a Dr. Phil exclusive, a 16-year-old girl missing for 399 days.
Charlotte teen Haley Burns has been found.
Choked.
I suspect I have minor brain damage from being choked.
Locked in a cage.
You said he trained you like a dog.
I had a dog collar. I had to sit when he told me to sit, bark when he told me to bark.
Starved.
You said you were given weight goals.
He wanted me to be skinnier. He wanted me to be about 75 pounds.
But the man she was found with,
The roommates that testified that she could leave when she wanted.
says it was all consensual.
He says he committed no crime. Today's going to be a changing day in your life. You've never had anybody working harder to bring you to the threshold of change than right now. Well, Haley Burns was only 16 years old when she disappeared, making national headlines. Now, after 399 days, Haley was found, confined behind a gate in the bedroom of a 31-year-old man she had met in an online chat room. The man, Michael Wysolowiski, insisted he was helping Haley and that their relationship was 100% consensual. Today, in a daytime exclusive, Haley reveals what she claims was 13 months of non-consensual punishment that included being starved and locked in a dog cage. Now, Haley's parents, Shauna and Tony, say their family's nightmare started the morning of May 23rd, 2016. Take a look.
16-year-old Haley disappeared.
Burns missing for more than a year.
Her family told us she disappeared from her home back on May 23rd, 2016.
CMPD and the FBI are now involved in the effort to find Haley.
May the 23rd, 2016 was a day that I'll never forget.
That morning, I went into her room at about 5:30 to wake her up. When I pulled the blankets back like this, there was stuffed animals all underneath here.
I remember waking up to my wife yelling into the door, "Tony, I can't find Haley." I jumped out of the bed.
He was in a frantic state.
I looked in every room, her bedroom. I went into our bonus room. I went into the garage. I came straight up this hall, right to this front door. The door was ajar, kind of like this. At that moment, I knew something was wrong. She was gone.
I was in total shock that she had left.
Went to the trash cans and I found a stack of paper full of information.
She had printed off a list of all the states and the age of consent for sex and the punishment for being caught with a minor across the state lines. Only an adult would be concerned about the punishment for being found with a minor.
I read her journals and I found a list called Daddy's Rules.
They had been given to her by an anonymous person. She was not allowed to eat certain things, to watch certain things, and there was also a list of punishments.
When I read that, I knew that someone had convinced her to go. We put posters up. We hired a private investigator.
Anthony and Shauna Burns are hard at work on a gift for their daughter, redecorating her room. But they have no idea when or even if she'll see it.
I started contacting every news station. We wanted to send a signal to Haley that we had not stopped looking.
The FBI is now offering a reward to find their daughter Haley.
As soon as the FBI got involved, they took all of her cell phones, they scrubbed every computer, they interviewed all these contacts that she had online, and they were able to find nothing.
It broke him.
I would wake up in the morning and I would start crying. And I would scream in the car on the way to work, cry in the office. I cried so much that I burned out my contacts in my eyes. And I had to get LASIK so that I could see again. I'd sit outside of her garage every night for 5 hours looking down the road that she walked down. I'd stay there until probably 3 a.m. and I was just thinking maybe I'd see her coming back and it would end. We were broken. We had to accept that she was gone.
Well, after a year and 34 days of worry and despair, Shauna says she was contacted online by a woman halfway around the world in Romania who said Haley had made contact with her and was alive.
Missing for more than a year, tonight Charlotte teen Haley Burns has been found. An American student studying in Romania who met Haley in a chat room realized that she was in danger.
Her family is shocked and relieved. Neighbors say they can't believe it.
On June 23rd, 2017, my wife and I received a message on Facebook from someone named Kat in Romania.
They said, I think I know where Haley is. She's safe and she wants to come home. I was very much guarded.
My wife asked Kat to send a picture of my daughter to confirm that it was her.
We got a picture of Haley holding a sign that says Kit Kat, the name of the person in Romania.
At that moment, I knew she was alive. All the pain just moved away. I contacted the FBI.
The FBI agent was on the phone with the Georgia detectives, trying to establish where Haley was.
Talking to Haley through the police, and the police are asking, what can you see outside of your window? Can you hear any trains in the background?
According to Kat, Haley was in a 2-story brick building in Georgia. That was all the information that we had.
She took a picture out of her window. My wife zoomed in on the picture and was able to see the sign for the street.
I could see at the very end of the street, tiny little white for sale sign. So then I went on Google and a house popped up, maybe 4 doors down to the left of the location that she's in.
Police are talking to us and they say, you need to tell her to signal us. So my daughter pieced the blind up a little bit and then said, hoot, hoot, out of the window.
They heard it and they saw her in the window and then she fainted. At that point, our communication with her stopped.
I didn't know if she was alive or dead. After the longest 45 minutes of my life, the FBI told me that they had her safe and that we needed to come down to Georgia and pick her up.
17-year-old Burns, missing for more than a year, was found safe early Sunday morning in Georgia.
The 31-year-old arrested in the crime, Michael Wieselowski, is charged with aggravated sodomy, false imprisonment, interference with custody, and cruelty to children.
As soon as we walked into the police station, she ran over to us and hugged us.
Everyone was crying. Haley was crying. Tony was crying. The grown men in uniform. It was all just such a feeling of joy and happiness that we'd found her.
I felt like the nightmare was finally over.
Take me through the moment when it hit the two of you. She's gone. She's missing. Something's wrong here.
I'm the one that goes through our home and locks our doors every night to secure it. I'm very meticulous about how I do things. I have three girls. I have the same system. As soon as I walked down those stairs, around that corner to the garage and came back and just saw a little corner of the door pushed up, I knew at that moment that something bad had happened. I didn't know what, but my heart dropped and we were in panic mode from that point forward.
At that point, did you think she had just snuck out? Did you think she had been abducted?
Yes, we
what
thought
did you
she'd been
think?
abducted because she would never even walk to the mailbox by herself.
Okay.
She's just socially very anxious and she needs a lot of reassurance and she needs a lot of, she needs a cheerleader with her all the time.
So this was hugely out of character for her to think that she would just wander off or go sneak off with friends because she didn't have friends.
So out of character, my brain could not comprehend that that was a possibility.
Right. She escaped into the online world, right? Because that was much easier for her to deal with than the real world.
With school, being bullied, not ever getting acceptance, and basically facing ridicule on a daily basis.
Right.
It's easy to then go online where you're anonymous. You can be whoever you want to be. If you fail, you just move to the next person. There's no accountability.
Right. Now, she met this Michael, who was 31 when she was 15, and she waited until she was 16 before she left, though. So she had been talking to him for a while, right?
He waited. He made sure that she was 16 before she left.
So you think he waited until...
Yes.
Oh, there's no
he
question.
wanted her within the first week,
Right.
but she was only 15, so he was like, you can't risk it. He made her very aware of the punishment for him if she chose to go before she was 16.
Okay. Now, you started monitoring the home computer.
Yes.
So she started talking to this guy on the school computer.
Yes.
She found a way to get her... She's very bright.
She's incredibly good on the internet,
Right.
Way better than anyone even ever suspected. And honestly, we don't live in a world where you can have a kid that's not on the internet.
Of course.
It's just unreasonable. We
No.
did the best that we could, but the
It's a
world
different
we live
generation.
in, we only had so much power when it came to that.
Now, next, Haley claims her nightmare began the moment she walked through this individual's front door. Now, we're going to meet her after the break. We'll be right back.
He called me his dog. I had to sit when he told me to sit, bark when he told me to bark. I had a dog collar. I was not treated like a human being. If I fought back, he'd hurt me.
She was suffering from malnutrition.
I would go days without food. He wanted me to be skinnier, about 75 pounds.
And later,
He kept his phone completely locked and hidden away from me. He kept his computer locked. There was no way for me to get help, and I knew that immediately.
how did you get on the internet eventually? After being gone for over 13 months, Haley Burns was found in another state with a fake ID in the home of a 31-year-old man, Michael Wysolowski. Wysolowski insists that he and then 16-year-old Haley were in an agreed-upon sexual relationship, where Haley says what she endured was far from consensual.
Tonight, the teenager is back at home safe. She lost 15 to 20 pounds.
Haley says he raped, starved, and tortured her, sometimes holding her in a dog cage.
My everyday existence for the entire 13 months that I was away was mostly horrific abuse. I was not treated like a human being. I had a dog collar. I was trained with a dog clicker. He called me his dog. Like a dog, I had to sit when he told me to sit, lie down when he told me to lie down, bark when he told me to bark. If I fought back, he'd hurt me. The punishment for that was being subdued in the cage with my arms behind my back and my knees underneath me with nothing.
Doctors at the Atlanta hospital who examined Haley determined she was suffering from malnutrition.
He wanted me to be skinnier, about 75 pounds. I'd be told, go eat Jell-O, go eat chicken broth, go eat something that isn't filling. Every week, he'd give me a weight goal to reach, and if I didn't reach that goal, I'd just have to starve until I reached the goal. I would go days without food. If I ate over the goal for calories, which is usually under 600, he'd tell me he'd beat me. To make things even worse, he'd give me food if I would perform lewd sex acts. The second I arrived at Michael's house, he led me to the bedroom and assaulted me. I was a brand new shiny toy, and he made sure to use that toy as much as he could. He would punch me, usually in the face or in the upper chest. Whenever he wanted to, he'd grab me by the hair and put his hand over the front of my throat and just choke me out. Michael would choke me up to 10 times per day. In the shower, he liked to waterboard me or hold me underwater until I passed out. If he had a guest over who was open to kinky things, he'd definitely make a show out of abusing me and of me taking it. I disassociated heavily to cope with what was happening to me. I didn't really process anything. I didn't think I'd survive. I accepted that I would be there forever.
Well, I'm very glad to meet you. It's amazing that you're here. It's amazing that you were found. You said when you got in the car that you immediately felt like you had made a mistake. What clicked that made you think, bad idea?
It just kind of hit that I was like completely at his mercy now.
He then drove you somewhere, and you went into the house. What happened when you got there?
Immediately he took me back to a bedroom and assaulted me.
And you said he trained you like a dog. Had you two discussed this at all?
No.
Because there was this BDSM relationship, deals with dominance and submission and all. Had you discussed that at all?
Barely. It was agreed that there would be a consensual relationship, that we would agree to the terms of which later.
Okay, so vague.
Vague, very vague.
Did you ever indicate early on, I don't want to do this anymore, I want out of here?
First day.
First day?
First day.
And what was the response?
It's your life now. You're stuck.
And he tried to train you with a clicker. Tell me about that.
Every amount of clicks would mean a certain command, such as stop what you're doing and go to the bed, or stop what you're doing and remove your clothing, things like that.
Now, there were times when you were handcuffed, and there were times when you were tied up and left for hours, and this was punishment phase, right? Mm-hmm. And what would you do to be punished?
Speak in public, or make my presence known, or fight him during sexual acts, stuff like that.
You said that you had to sleep on the shower floor, on the bedroom floor, or in a dog cage. What determined where you would sleep?
If I wanted to sleep comfortably, I would have to sleep next to him, and I did not like to sleep next to him, so I would find other places to sleep.
Now, you said you were given weight goals every week to meet, and you were starved for days if you didn't reach the goal. Were you given anything to eat, nothing to eat?
Usually no, nothing to eat.
And you said sometimes he would choke you as much as 10 times a day?
I haven't had it diagnosed, but I suspect I have minor brain damage from all of the being choked out.
Tell me about your rabbit here.
This is Bunbury III of Essex. I took him with me, and I took him back from there.
So you had this the entire time? And were you allowed to keep it with you?
He liked when I held him during stuff would happen, because it made me look younger. He was my only comfort item. I didn't really have anything else. Like, even when I was in the cage, I would have Bun near me.
Well, next, Haley says that Wesolowski made her feel like she had no choice but to run away from home with him. We'll talk about that after the break.
He convinced me that if I wanted to be happy, I had to run away. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know his name. I didn't know anything about him. I thought I wouldn't do it, and then I did do it. Honestly, I don't know what made me go through with it.
And later,
Michael was looking for another girl the entire time he had me. I was going to be one of a harem. I had a refrigerator box, and the agreement was that while I was in the refrigerator box, he wasn't allowed to touch me or talk to me or interact with me in any way. It was my natural way to get a timeout from the abuse. But behind his back, I started sneaking like protein bars and water into the box. And after he beat me terribly, I went into the box and didn't leave for 9 days. I had to leave the box because I ran out of food and I was really hungry. He beat me so badly that I was stuck in bed for like 3 days. And he made me destroy the box.
well, Haley says during the 399 days with Wesolowski, she made one agreement with him, that he could not touch her while she was inside a large cardboard box in his bedroom. Now, Haley says that Wesolowski began pressuring her to run away just 3 days after meeting him online.
The Myers Park High School student met a stranger in a chat room, and he convinced her to leave home.
I first met Michael when I was 15 in a pro-anorexia chat room. He was pretending he had a disorder. He was like, well, I could be your daddy. And that's our opening conversation. He had me post nude photos on my Tumblr of child porn and then delete them quickly so that he could save them. After about 3 days, he kept talking about how much he loved runaways and loved taking care of them and treating them like princesses. He manipulated me heavily. He convinced me that if I wanted to be happy, I had to run away and that I had no life outside of him. He insinuated there would be a consensual BDSM relationship. It was constant pressure. He basically set the stage for me being like, well, I could run away. I gave him my address, and he looked at maps and chose a place for us to meet. I did bail on the plan. It was raining. I didn't want to walk 3 miles in the rain. He was very upset. He basically insinuated that he was risking his life for this and that me bailing was showing that I had no respect for him and his life. He convinced me to try again 2 days later. And if I didn't do it, I would never speak to him again. The thought of never speaking to him again terrified me. That night, I ran late to our meeting. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know his name. I didn't know anything about him. I had never seen him. I knew the color car that he drove and the road that he would be on, and that's all he gave me. Honestly, I don't know what made me go through with it.
How early on did you make the decision? Did you know in your mind I'm going to meet this person. Was this a last-minute decision or
Last
something
minute.
that you contemplated
Last
along?
minute. It was kind of a funny joke at first. It was like a, haha, this is fun to fantasize about. Like, I'm not actually going to do it.
What pushed you over that line at the very end?
He pushed me really, really, really hard, and I just was impulsive, and I was like, okay.
Once you were there, there's a tendency to try and convince them that the world they left doesn't care about them anymore. Parents don't want you back. They don't care about you. Everybody's moved on. You're just lost, isolated, and this is the only place you have to be. Did you hear that from him?
100% immediately. Almost immediately. It was like, I bet they're happier with you gone. 2 weeks in, he was like, I don't see any media presence about you. Stuff like that. Like, nobody cares that you're gone. And he made sure to show me statistics on arrested runaways and insinuate and heavily relay to me that I would be institutionalized or arrested if I left.
Did that get to you?
I believed it wholeheartedly from the beginning.
Once you started believing that, did you think you would ever get out of there? Or did you think that was your life?
I kind of knew from the beginning that I was stuck. I didn't know the area I was in. I didn't have any contacts. He kept his phone completely locked and hidden away from me. He kept his computer locked. There was no way for me to get help, and I knew that immediately.
Mm-hmm. How did you get on the internet eventually?
He had like a trust system where after about a year I was trusted with a device that didn't have internet. Mm-hmm. It was locked, and I'm resourceful. I know how technology works. So I factory data reset it and deleted the app locker that was locking the internet, and then I just connected it to mobile data.
Of course you did. Next, Haley says right before she was found, Weissowski wanted to bring home another girl, something Haley believes would have led to her death. We'll talk about why she says that after the break.
The only time I was ever allowed to go outside the house was on outings. I wasn't allowed to speak to anyone without permission. I knew that if I talked with people, I would be punished. I got beat for that so hard.
And later, there's no way to have experienced what you've experienced and it not have an impact on you. Had you done any of this before?
No.
So all of this is since you've been back.
Eventually, Michael got very tired of me, and Michael was looking for another girl the entire time he had me. I was going to be one of a harem, and I had no choice in the matter. I knew that when he got another girl, I would probably die of neglect, and it would be very hard for me to stay alive. I did my best to stop him. Manipulation, downright breakdowns, anything I could do. Luckily, I managed to stop him from getting another girl.
Well, despite Haley telling authorities the details of what she claims she endured for over a year, Michael Weissowski took a plea, spent only 8 months in jail, and still professes his innocence. Now, despite the FBI looking for her, there were many times where Haley was out in public and in plain sight.
I was not allowed any contact with the outside world. The only time I was ever allowed to go outside the house was on outings. Michael dyed and cut my hair, and I usually wore wigs and elaborate makeup when I went out so that I wouldn't look like me. Often he would hold my wrist when we were shopping. I wasn't allowed to go out of his sight, and I wasn't allowed to get things that weren't previously agreed upon. I wasn't allowed to speak to anyone without permission. I wasn't allowed to speak to him without permission. I knew that if I talked with people, I would be punished. One time, we went to the aquarium and I had a massive breakdown. He took me outside and I got beat for that so hard. Eventually, I'd go out about once a week for food. We had a bartering system where every $15 spent on something that wasn't a necessity. So if I wanted a stuffed animal food, I had to earn things like that through sexual favors. Every single $15 amount was a violent sexual act. By the end, I had a very large amount of items, which really does show how much abuse I suffered.
Well, I'm here with Haley, her parents, Shauna and Tony. Haley was found after 399 days of being missing from her home. And I heard the gasp of the audience when it was stated that he took a plea deal. And at this point, this is pretty shocking to you guys, I know, and I'm sure it is to you as well. And I just need to say something to you. You know, people go through horrific things in their lives, and it's awful easy to kind of curl up and tuck away and just kind of keep their head low off the radar. It takes, A, a lot of courage, and B, a lot of selflessness to come forward and use your life and your story to help others. And I just want to say, God bless you for coming here and talking about this. When you look back over everything that took place, what would you do differently? And I know the big answer to that is I would have never walked out that door. But beyond that, do you look back now and see things that you would change?
There were a lot of times I was around acquaintances or friends of his and being paraded as a pet, where I could have reached out for help and didn't because I was 100% sure that they were on his side. But I feel like I probably should have.
But had you done that and you were wrong,
Exactly.
what would have happened to you?
No idea.
You said there was a point where there was talk of him bringing someone else in, and you felt like that would have been very dangerous for you. Why do you feel that?
Especially near the end, he was barely feeding me. So if there had been a new shiny thing for him to lavish all of his attention and his money on, then where would the food come from?
And you said you were behind a gate much of the time. Is this when he would leave the house?
Yes. And when he was in the house.
Okay. And then go about his business, do whatever he wanted to do.
He would have house parties.
And he would just tell you what? Don't make noise?
To hide in the closet.
And what would go on? What would you hear going on through the door?
He would tell people that he kept all of the pets behind the gate, which to him wasn't a lie. I was a pet. I wasn't a human.
It's been 18 months since they've been reunited, but Haley and her parents say every day is still a struggle. Take a look.
Since being rescued and coming back home, I've definitely struggled with self-harm. I've self-injured hundreds of times. I've cut my arm and my thighs. I have permanent scarring, nerve damage. It's painful. I've gone to the emergency room like 3 or 4 times since I've gotten home, and I do overdose occasionally. I don't have any active thoughts of killing myself, but if I'm triggered, I'll pretty much do anything to hurt myself.
Since coming home, she can't go back to school. She doesn't have any friends. She can't relate to people. She has complex PTSD. She's been damaged.
The way that my brain organizes thought has changed completely and probably will never be the same. Certain smells, certain tastes, showers, baths, a certain album that he played all the time, or a certain song that we listened to while out completely just freaked me out.
Simple things trigger her. Dog food triggers her. The leash or a collar, because he kept her in a dog cage and treated her like a dog.
I wake up having panic attacks often. I obsessively check windows, door locks. I can't convince the emotional part of my brain that he's not hiding inside it with a gun.
It's incredibly hard to see her suffer like this.
It breaks me. She didn't deserve it.
Well, Haley, there's no way to have experienced what you've experienced and it not have an impact on you. So you're cutting yourself. And where do you cut yourself?
My arm.
And do you do this a lot?
Not as often lately.
And how severely do you do that? May I see where you're cutting your arm?
Pretty severely. I would say a 9 on a scale of 10, usually, sometimes a 7, but it's a relative scale.
Okay, had you done any of this before?
No.
So all of this is since you've been back. Why do you do this?
I don't know, I just do. It just exists. There's really no rhyme or reason to it, it just makes me feel better.
You realize that this is something that you need to work on and heal, right? Now, after only 8 months behind bars, this Michael Wysolowski walked free, never went to trial. So why? We're going to discuss that after the break.
Wysolowski got a deal. He pleaded guilty to child cruelty and had to register as a sex offender.
After all the horrific things that he did to my daughter, he got no jail time. The DA explained to me at that time that there was a gray area in the case.
The district attorney said that because of the BDSM relationship that she entered into voluntarily, it was too hard for them to determine when the relationship became consensual and when it became non-consensual. To even compare that to the situation that my daughter was in was unacceptable.
He lowered my self-esteem greatly and led me to believe I would never be loved or have a proper life if I gained any weight.
Charlotte teenager Haley Burns faced the man who lured her to Georgia when she was only 16 in court today.
She stood up in front of him and took all of her power back.
Even after missing teen Haley Burns was reported to be found malnourished and confined to a bedroom, the man she was discovered with says he committed no crimes. Now, to the shock of many, he was not convicted of the most egregious offenses and never went to trial. Wysolowski's attorney's statement is this: I don't have any comment. I would urge you to review a copy of the bond hearing in the case where witnesses were called and gave sworn testimony. And so here are some excerpts from that bond hearing. Quote, Haley Burns being in a relationship, a BDSM relationship, a consensual and voluntary relationship, she was right where she wanted to be at all times. There were 2 roommates you're going to hear from. She had access to the internet, could go and come as she pleased. There's no indication from those roommates that there was anything other than a consensual, voluntary BDSM relationship. She made the decision she did not want to be in the relationship anymore and was home the next day. She always had the power. The roommates that testified at the bond hearing, roommate number 1 said they kicked Haley out for leaving food and sugary things all over, would do whatever she wanted, no signs of duress, spoke with great enthusiasm toward actions that were planned or had just happened. This decision, the decision to leave home with Michael, was far better than her other options. Roommate number 2, she had a key. She could leave when she wanted. Expressed phobia of the public, was allowed to pretty much eat whatever she wanted. She said this is the happiest moment she had in her life. So those were things that Wazalowski's attorney presented at the bond hearing. And so the prosecutors make a decision whether or not they're apt to get a conviction or it's going to be fuzzy enough that they could lose the entire thing. How do you feel about this plea agreement?
I'll tell you, if I learned anything from this, I completely understand why victims don't come forward. She was re-victimized by the people that were supposed to be protecting her and keeping her and her safety paramount. They did not care about her. They did not care about the fact that what he did to her, they didn't care. And that was the hardest part for us, was to just see how little, like with the FBI going in and finding her in the way that they did, and they had all of the evidence that they needed, even with all of that, it still wasn't enough. We expected going in that this would be a slam dunk, no question, he's going to jail for life, never going to hurt anybody again. And in fact, we were told something entirely different that none of us saw coming. And Haley especially didn't see it coming, and was like, the worst self-harm that she's done the entire time happened after he was given bond, because she couldn't understand and process how they could let him go after what he did to her.
You know, you're told, go to the exit. And then you go to the exit, and you're met with criticism, doubt, skepticism at everything that you say. You're looking for a vindication. You just want somebody to get behind you and say, I believe you. I see who you are. I see your age. I see your struggle. And she's never had that.
Until today.
That's why I said what I said to her.
We appreciate that.
That God bless her for coming here and using her life and having the courage to save others. And so you do know, Wazalowski is currently incarcerated for 2 years because the probation he got on this has been violated. I just want to tell you, I really am proud of you guys using your lives, proud of you allowing her to come here and speak about this. The runaways fantasize. I think old sayings get to be old sayings because they're profound. An old saying about the grass always being greener on the other side of the fence. You know, a lot of people, a lot of these kids think, wow, it's terrible at home. I don't like having to go to school. I don't like having to do homework. And here's somebody telling me, oh, we'll run and play and just have a wonderful time. And then they get out there and find out, oh, wow, this isn't what I thought it was. This is a perfect example of that being the case. And using this story as a cautionary tale is going to save an awful lot of suffering with an awful lot of young girls. And I just hope all of you at home really allow your children to watch this. People ask me all the time, how much privacy do I give my children? When it comes to the internet, 0. 0. I'm sorry. I mean, listen, they have the knowledge to use the internet. They don't have the wisdom to use it. We have the wisdom, but not the knowledge. They can navigate around there. And you heard what she said about how she did it. She defaulted back to factory settings. I can't even repeat what she said. She has the knowledge, but not the wisdom to see around corners. It takes us, it takes our ability to see around corners and recognize grooming, recognize all the dangers that are out there. So know who your kids are talking to on the internet. I want to thank all of my guests today. Thank you guys for being here. And thank you. For more information about today's show, log on to drphil.com. I saw this post on my Facebook the other day. Sherry Parsons wrote, with some of the heartbreaking stories you've heard, how do you manage not to cry? Let me tell you, I definitely cry inside, I can promise you. I have children. I'm a parent first and a professional second. And it does break my heart, I can assure you. And I think the reason that I can help people a lot is because I'm not down in that trench with them. I need to stay up and be objective where I can see alternatives, see resources, see solutions. And sometimes when you're so close and emotional, it's just very, very difficult to do so. So I really hold myself to a standard of remaining objective. But don't think for a minute, it does not break my heart what your daughter has been through. We'll see you next time. Thanks so much.